this is Emily Whitten for ComicMix here with Billy West at AwesomeCon in DC. Billy, thank you for being here with us. And Billy is he's busy, so we're doing this while he eats a little bit.
I ain't that busy. I can talk with a mouthful of vegan sandwich.
That's fair. So you are such an amazingly storied, voice actor, etc.
Oh, thank you.
There's a lot to talk about, but I'm going to try to distill it down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And let's start with the earlier things. So let's talk about how did you decide to get into voice acting, and because I know you were also were also a musician. So what was the kind of career path there?
Well, I remember I was like a little freak, I was always running around making noises and doing voices, and every time I wanted to play like the piano, we didn't have one, but if we were at somebody's house, to me that was a golden opportunity. I just wanted to hear it, touch it, and make it do something, because the sonic world that I had going on in my head would dictate that I would go over there, but the thing was I couldn't play. And they would, down comes the lid, can you not do that? I heard that more than any other kid probably in the world. Can you not do that?
Oh.
Yeah, and I was always trying stuff. It was peripheral and surreal, abstract stuff, but, that's, I had a weird childhood. It was, my house was a horror house, and my dad was just, like, certifiable and a drunk and a crazy, and, so I was growing up kind of terrified, and I was very hypervigilant. I could tune into things. Like, I could tell you what kind of a night I was going to have by the way the car pulled up in the driveway. Or the way the key went in the door. I was so in tune with, like, people's behaviors and, out of survival mode. But it trained me like a cop, I was becoming an observer, like an extreme observer.
So from your experiences, you were able to be observant about, people and how they acted and how they behaved. And so obviously that would help you later on.
I loved radio. Oh, I loved radio so much because the voices. And there was still some radio plays going on when I was a kid. There was a radio guy named Stan Freeberg that had a radio show, and he had one of my favorite voice guys on it, whose name was Dawes Butler, and he did a lot of the Hanna-Barbera stuff.
Oh, yeah, which is all great, of course.
And he, he was a little ball of fire, this Dawes Butler, and I just came to know these people, but there was no way you could know anything about show business in those days, because there was no emphasis on it. That was for other people. Well, who? It's like nobody in my town. I was such a geek, I had to hunt down the only kid who had comic books, the only other kid who had comic books, and he lives on the other side of town. And I just set my inner GPS and found him. I just walked and walked until I found him somewhere.
And so what kind of comics did you guys read when you and this kid were growing up?
Silly stuff. We read the Marvel stuff. We read... I didn't mean that was silly. DC comics were not silly. They were exciting. But like Gold Key comics were silly. There was The Fly, which was Charlton Comics, and he was their superhero. And he fell by the wayside because the other machines were a little more happening and powerful.
Right.
But I had the original issues of some really important comic books rather. Like I had Secret Origins of Batman and all those. They came out in like 1960. 1959, maybe 1961.
Do you still have them?
No.
Oh, that's too bad.
It went up my nose.
Back in the day.
Yeah.
Well, but that's really so do you still follow comics these days?
I try to. I like the revamps of stuff they're doing because there's so much time that has gone by that these characters have been around, and eventually they've got to morph. They're not going to get older on us, even though they can dance in and out of time frames to show old Superman, like where he wound up,
Yeah, they did that, of course.
Yeah. And there's so many comic books that it's tough to keep track of them.
Do you watch the movies and everything?
I try to go to movies, yeah, when I can. I'm writing a lot, and I stay up late into the evening. And
Okay, what are you writing right now?
there's a couple of projects that I've got going with my partner that I worked with on Ren and Stimpy.
Oh.
And his name is Jim Gomez, and we put together like 5 fully developed shows, most of them animated.
Mm-hmm.
And we're pitching them around town, and see what happens. I love doing what I'm doing.
Uh-huh.
I can be an objective fulfillment machine for the rest of my life, but at some point I do want to create or own something and give myself the objective.
Yeah. I think most creators or all creators feel that way. I mean, it just makes sense.
Yeah, but I will still always go and work for somebody else, probably doing voiceover.
Mm-hmm. Now you said, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
You said, of course, that you love radio and you've been on the radio. And I know when I was growing up, I heard you on K-Rock. And so tell me what that was like. What was that experience like? I mean, I used to listen to that in the morning when I was getting ready for school. And
Didn't you feel like there was like subterfuge involved with that? Like you couldn't just let everybody hear that.
Yeah, don't tell my parents, okay?
Exactly, because that was.
No, it's true. Actually, they didn't like that show. They didn't like Howard Stern. They didn't like any of that. I had to kind of be like, I'm gonna subtly.
Of course not. But
I hope they don't read this interview.
But the people who listened to it got it. They understood that everything was silly.
Yeah.
It was all about being totally silly in the face of the most horrific subjects.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And pushing boundaries, but not like
pushing boundaries.
Yeah. So I'm sorry. So go on.
It was very organic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we didn't play records.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And Howard was a master, like a great ringleader. He knew, like a ringmaster, he knew, okay, when something's enough. Mm-hmm. We beat it so far, that's fine. Let's go to commercial and we'll start something else. He'd always keep things moving.
Okay, right. And how did you end up working there?
I was in radio.
You worked in radio before that.
Yeah, in Boston.
Okay.
And I wasn't a disc jockey. I was very creative, and showcasing the works of others for a living didn't turn me on. Right. Because I would always feel like a curator in a museum, Mm-hmm. But these disc jockeys were really pompous about playing records, and it's like, dude, you didn't create the statues, you just dust them. And I used to get reamed for having that type of attitude. It's like, but you're not allowed to unmask these icons, And it's like, screw you. You don't do anything. I was always like surly because there was so much like phoniness that used to drive me crazy. And like I said, my heroes were the artists, not people who were famous for some, cottage industry reason. Like disc jockeys or TV show hosts,
Right.
Yeah, they're not creating anything. So my heroes were never celebrities. Mm-hmm. It was always artists. And if they happened to be a celebrity, that was a byproduct of their great talent, their great artistic talent.
So being on a show like, the Howard Stern show where you got to interact and do your own thing, that was
very appealing to me.
Yeah.
And you had to be ready for anything.
Mm-hmm. So did that help you prepare in large part for the voice acting? And how much were you also doing voice acting some when you were on the show, or did that come later? What was the,
Well, I'd already been doing voice acting in Boston on the radio. And then when I went to New York, it was more of an opportunity to open up and to push myself to see what I was capable of. Plus, I had one of the funniest people in the universe lobbing in little lines here and there for me. Mm-hmm. But people said, Jackie wrote everything for you. Hey, yeah, sure. Let me just talk straight like in a character for 7 minutes. A guy can't write every bit of dialogue that you say for 7 minutes. He can put in ideas and you integrate them into your conversation.
Right. Now, when you were
he did it for Howard.
Yeah.
All the time. But Howard was very generous. I mean, that's like loaning somebody a nuclear weapon, that he would let Jackie Martling, facilitate me.
And now, when you were doing all of this, I know you also played guitar and had a band, and also played guitar with Roy Orbison.
I opened up for a lot of famous guys that I knew growing up, like Roy Orbison and Chuck Berry and the Four Seasons and Jan and Dean. And later on in life, I actually got to play with Brian Wilson.
Okay, and so when was that happening in comparison to the radio and the voice acting and everything?
Radio just started happening as I was phasing out of playing music.
Okay, so that came a little bit before, and...
Yes, and then after a moratorium, when I did pick up again in the future, as the years went by, I wound up playing with one of my idols, which was Brian Wilson.
Right, okay, so what was all of that like? I mean, what was it like playing with Brian Wilson?
It was me and the Cars guitar player, Elliot Easton.
Oh, okay.
From the Cars.
Yeah.
And we were playing with Brian, and a friend of mine was playing bass, and it was a put-together little band. But, I mean, I knew every note of the whole catalog. I knew every harmony. I knew every chord change.
Right.
Because I was so into the Beach Boys. The Beatles and Jeff Beck, the English stuff was good. But, the Beach Boys were our band. And it was like a dream, just playing with Brian Wilson, and then next thing we were at Lincoln Center. And when we played David Letterman.
Oh, okay.
And it was crazy. I mean, I'm playing these songs with Brian Wilson, and I still can't get over it.
Yeah, well, it's amazing. I mean, it's
He
fantastic.
did all those hot rod songs, Girls and Cars and Fun. And we did 409 on stage. He was like singing 409. Which is the old Hot Rod song. And in the chorus, nothing can touch her, nothing can catch my 409, 409. And I started going, and he looked over with this happy, like, astonished smile, like a little child. He's like, what's going on? But I love this, whatever you're doing over there.
Oh, that's great. That's fantastic. Yeah. So now, obviously, your voice acting is a large part of your career, and Futurama is a big part of that. And you developed Philip Fry, it was Philip J. Fry, if I'm doing the whole name.
Well, that's because most cartoon characters' middle initial was J.
Yeah.
Rocket
Well, at least...
J. Squirrel, Homer J. Simpsons,
So now, when you were developing that character, because that is your...
Stimson J. Cat.
Yeah. And you said that Fry is, similar to you at 25. And so, like, when they had you in doing, testing for Futurama or auditioning for it, did they ask you to develop that character? Did you come in and say, this is something I've,
They showed me the pictures when I went in.
Okay.
And there was some dialogue they wanted me to read. And I just, it's like something you look at, it gives you an impression, and depending on your experience or your talent or your intuition, you're hoping that you'll come up with what they're looking for. And all of them were pretty much very close to what I gave them, They described Fry, and I said, you know what? I don't do this very often, but I'm going to just use my own voice like when I was 25. I remember I was very whiny and complainy, and I just know I had a plain vanilla voice. I had no idea I had this wild animal in my throat somewhere, this big clumsy beast that could do anything. I really didn't know back in those days.
Yeah.
And because I was singing and playing. But I would go in to do voices on stage, like when we blew up an amp or a string snapped or whatever. I would, out of embarrassment, I would just keep going and entertaining. Might not have been the music or anything, but people loved it.
Yeah.
Like launching into characters that I would make up and imitate or whatever.
Right. And now on Futurama, you do a lot of the voices. How did that, it is common to do more than one voice on a show, but you seem to do a lot of the voices. How did that come about? Is it just that you just came up with some of those characters?
I tried.
Or they just asked you, we have another character for you to do?
Yeah, well, they just keep showing me pictures, and I auditioned for everybody, including Bender.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I played him as a construction worker, and John DiMaggio came in and mopped the floor with that audition. He was like, he played it as like kind of a punch-drunk fighter.
Yeah, Bender is a great voice. It's a great
beautiful.
Character.
And it doesn't, it developed into what it is. In the beginning, none of us sounded like who we were. I mean, that's who we thought we were.
Right.
At the time, but voices morph. You listen to an episode number 10 from The Simpsons, and you listen to the 200th episode.
Yeah.
And it's like, huh? Homer Simpson was like,
and then later on he gets.
Later on, he developed all these other facets, that make the character so interesting and believable.
Mm-hmm. Now, in Futurama or in your other acting, what are your favorite, couple or three characters to play or to have played? What do you enjoy doing the most, and what maybe was the most difficult?
I love doing all the characters, and I love them equally. So I can't pick out a favorite because I just try to bring so much, imagination to it. And, I was always trying to do something nobody had done, and that served me well. I didn't want to mimic people. I could do it, and I've held up franchises.
Right. Well, and I've heard you.
I did 4 years of Woody Woodpecker and Popeye, the works.
Yeah.
But you only make your mark for real if you start creating and it catches on. And you have faith that you're just as good as those impressions that you relied on. That was your little power base.
Right, well, because they were starting out once, and they made up those voices, and so, and so were any of those maybe the ones where you were doing the impressions or your own, what was the most difficult to do?
I don't know. I know that I had become fearless, like totally fearless. I'm not afraid of anything, and I'm willing to try anything. I'm willing to fail. I was like that in comedy clubs because it didn't make sense to me. Why should I memorize 12 minutes worth of material to go out and pretend every night that I just thought of it? I needed stakes. I needed real things at stake, like dying or bombing. I really did, and I wasn't afraid to.
And how long did you do? Did you do a lot of stand-up or a little
Not
bit?
a lot.
Okay.
A little bit, and then I got into radio, and so that was it. Stand-up is very, very hard. There's guys that are just so amazing at it and everything. But my forte was not stage performance doing stand-up. My forte was radio. And that was a bigger playground. And, you could dodge in and out of characters, and you didn't even have to have written material. You could ad lib while you've got these crazy voices going back and forth.
In your voice work, how much do they want and or let you ad-lib when you're, because you do have the script in voice work? Do they want a lot of that? Do they sometimes you just do it and then they come back and say that was great, we'll take that, or how does that work?
They want to get what they want to get, ideally what they had in mind, and then after you do that and they're happy with it, they ask you if you thought of anything or you want to add or bring something. And a lot of times I would, and a lot of times it made it in. Yeah, a lot of it just winds up, they want more than less, because that way they'll have options. They can play with stuff that they didn't think would work, and all of a sudden, oh my God, it works beautifully.
Right, because sometimes the improvisation is the best, it's the best part of life.
Yeah, but it's also this constant wonderment of discovery, whether something's going to work or not. Right. And that's like exploration. It's like you try to control every aspect of everything as much as you can, but when serendipitous things happen, like, what was that thing you just did? Oh, you mean this? And they say, yeah, what if he just goes right into that, Like when I did Nixon, I'm old enough to remember when Nixon was running for president and John F. Kennedy. And they did a debate on TV, and I was astonished at how, perfect Kennedy looked. Like a game show host, his perfect teeth and his buttered toast hair. And he was made for TV.
Yeah.
Nixon was made for wanted posters. He looked like a stolen car. And he was shifty-eyed, and he was nervous, and he was sweating. While the interview was continuing, he's getting worse. His beard is coming in. You could practically see his face, his bottom half get darker and darker. And I said to my mom, he's going to turn into a werewolf. Because I loved horror movies, and I watched Lon Chaney, slowly turning into the werewolf. And Nixon was he was kind of almost there, lycanthrophobic, And so he was just doing his thing, and I said, that's awful, he's almost unwatchable. And then years later, I get the chance to do Nixon
Right.
as a head in a jar, and I would say something like, "You filthy hippies, get off the grass outside this White House," and then all of a sudden I would go, "Aroo," like I was changing. I was like, "Aroo, aroo," just replacing words with noises and stuff. Aroo.
Oh, wow, it just sounds like so much fun. I know it's hard work, but it just sounds like so much fun.
Well, you gotta keep coming up with new bags of tricks and keep expanding them and everything, and that's how you keep working.
And now you were saying earlier that you have essentially you've had conversations with yourself many times, and I know that you were saying some examples of that were, well, Phil was saying the Farnsworth introducing Fry to Zoidberg and stuff like that, and then there was Doug and his arch nemesis. How does that? How do you deal with that? How does that work in your head? Because that seems to me to be even like a double challenge over just trying to sound a certain way all the time consistently.
It's like I had my boot camp training in Boston doing consecutive voices because I got a job as a producer, and there's no producer school you can go to. It's just I had to learn how to splice tape, and I had to learn how to write and create my own characters and bits and then put it together so it could be airable with sound effects and music and everything. I didn't quite know what I was doing, but I just did it,
And it works for you.
And whatever, I'm very strange in that way. Like, I still to this day can't tie my shoes properly. I just can't. And a necktie I have problems with.
Oh, well, I can't do that, so.
I know, but I mean, it's like, but I can't do anything practical. But if you ask me to do something only like 4 or 5 other people in the world can do, I have no problem.
So now, as a voice actor, I mean, you're known for several different things, but do you find, what's the experience of celebrity as a voice actor? Because obviously at this convention, there's a lot of people coming to see you, and do you have in Hollywood and or New York and with versus like actors on screen or writers? How do you experience that? I'm just curious because I don't know what that's like for someone who's mostly known by voice and different voices, so you wouldn't have actually know just talking to you that it was necessarily you. So.
Well, celebrities were never my heroes. Never. To this day. I don't give a dismal damn, really, whether Kim's having problems with her pregnancy. It's like, fuck you. When anybody who can fart the national anthem can become a celebrity. Any stupid-looking bald guy can throw on an earring and a goatee and a leather jacket, and now he's Pawn Stars, and they pose these guys like rappers, like album covers, like they're all like big, bad, and bold, and they're basically lucky imbeciles because show business ain't what it was anymore. Now it's supposed to be reality.
Yeah.
And these guys just have to be who and what they are, and then they learn how to act because they go, I like this ride very much. And they know it's going to be over, and they want to stay in that business. They don't want to go back to oblivion.
Yeah. But how do you, when you interact with fans and everything, do you find, it seems like, you have some people who, do they just know your whole oeuvre and they just,
There's people that know more about me than I do. Because I can't remember every little fiddle-faddle, But I'm just grateful. I'm so grateful. I mean, what are the odds that there would be people in this world that would put aside time in their life to know what you do and to follow it? I think it's mind-blowing to me. It's surreal, and it still is to this day.
Well, that's a great and very humble attitude, so.
Well, I mean, but I know the drill. I know the deal.
Yeah.
You have to somehow connect in one way or another with people who admire you. And hopefully you'll keep up the same kind of standard of work that turned them on in the first place.
Right.
And so I always try to, whatever new thing comes along, I just try to come in like gangbusters and, get some attention with it. Like, I like to turn tables over and bash chairs. And, when I first went to New York, I was like a Terminator. I got all skinny because I knew I was going to be walking everywhere and auditioning, and I used to listen to bagpipe music.
Bagpipe music?
Yeah, because I'm half Irish.
Right.
And when I hear bagpipe music, it makes this, Celtic side of me boil, and it prepares you to go into battle. I used to, like, I'd be galvanized like I was marching into a glen with my compatriots and we're all going to get stabbed and shot. But it's okay because we're doing it for the right reason.
That's fantastic.
And I used to listen to all these bagpipes, going up 2nd Avenue, 3rd Avenue to work. And I would get to the audition and I'd feel like, like a Terminator.
Like you were ready. Yeah. That's fantastic. Now, speaking of new things, you were saying when you're getting ready for new things, what currently are you working on, and/or what should we be looking forward to?
I'm doing some kids stuff. Mm-hmm. I never used to get hired by Disney because I wasn't their kind of guy. You know what I mean? I was like, the stuff I did was very gothic and darkish. Like screaming and yelling and very dramatic. But I got this show called the 7D, and I'm playing Bashful because the 7D are the 7 dwarfs.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, we're the 7D, and they get a beautiful, cute song and everything. And I love it. I love it to pieces.
And is that out or coming out?
It's coming out.
It's coming out, okay. So that's something.
And I was doing some voices for Avengers Assembled.
Hey.
And there's a character called Rocket Raccoon.
Rocket Raccoon, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So you're doing Rocket Raccoon, great.
Yeah, he's got kind of like a Joe Pesci, He's got like this Steve Buscemi, blood has been spilled, Jerry. I'm through fucking around with you, Jerry.
But I mean, somehow he has that voice. I thought it would be perfect to just, tweak it, and it's not a dead-on impression. I could care less about that.
Right.
What it is it funny? Is it interesting? Mm-hmm. Does it fit?
Yeah, so Rocket Raccoon, are you doing other ones for that too, or is it mainly him?
No, it was just him. I did a bunch of hours of recording the other day. Mm-hmm. And then, let's see, I have my projects going. That keeps me busy because I'm always writing.
Right, the writing projects that
I mean, I stay up all hours and stuff, but it's a labor of love, so you feel energized somehow.
Yeah. Well, I hope that we see some of that from you soon. And
I hope you do too.
Yeah, and thank you so much for this interview, Billy.
My
and I
pleasure.
hope you have a great rest of the con.
Oh, thank you very
Thanks so
much.
much.